I researched the Orton-Gillingham program. So the Orton-Gillingham program was put together by Anna Gillingham based on the dyslexia research from this neurobiologist Samuel Orton. So that's where the name Orton-Gillingham comes from, those two people. Orton's theory was that dyslexic kids who are otherwise normal or above average intelligence struggle because of weak associative power tied to the brain not fully suppressing its non-dominant hemisphere. Gillingham turned that idea into an actual teaching system, drilling sound, letter name, and handwriting together until it sticks. So there's a lot of theory behind it that doesn't necessarily actually explain why it works to the extent that it works. Here are some of the pros. It is direct, systematic, and explicit instruction, which is good. We know that works. The approach is incremental, it's structured, the lessons build on each other, and they explicitly teach the elements of language. And we know that that works. There's multisensory engagement, which might be good. I say engagement for a reason because we're not really sure that the multisensory aspect is really helping them learn necessarily, but and it is considered foundational from the Orton-Gillingham perspective, but it probably does help with engagement for some kids. Let's see. So instructors continuously monitor a student and then customize things for them. It's not just a script. You're supposed to be trained in the method of Orton-Gillingham, and then you're supposed to be able to customize things day to day based on the realities of the students you have in front of you. This method integrates decoding and encoding instruction and practice. So that's good. Those are topics that we need. But it won't be surprising necessarily later when we find out that it's not necessarily better than other methods that do the same basic thing. It is cognitive and linguistics based, which is good. Students are actively taught the rules of language, which helps them understand why a word is pronounced or spelled the way it is. The main research that I found for Orton-Gillingham says that it holds promise for struggling readers. I'll say more about that later, but basically they found a positive but not statistically significant effect size. So that might mean that they need more research, or it might mean that it's not really any better than other methods. Here are some cons. So there is a lack of definitive evidence for superiority. So before that 2021 meta-analysis that I'm going to go into more later, the What Works Clearinghouse had also looked at OG and found that it's not significantly better than any other foundational reading program or just regular reading instruction. And OG is high cost. To do it, you need to undergo expensive training. You need to spend a lot of time on the training. It makes it so that there just aren't going to be that many OG certified people. It's not really designed as a scalable solution to a wide-scale literacy problem. Frankly, it strikes me as more of a way to make money for an organization, but generously, it is not great at scaling to the level that it needs to for the problem that it's trying to solve. So, for more advanced phonemic awareness and more advanced issues generally, reviews have found that OG focuses too much on the basics, which also would be a familiar criticism for us based on the readings in this class. Let's see. Also, so the flip side, I just mentioned that a pro is that it's individualized, but the flip side of that is because it's not scripted, the delivery varies widely. And we'd like this to be like a reliable intervention for students. But it's difficult to research and it's also difficult to implement consistently because it's more about people being certified by an organization in a method rather than actually necessarily doing the same things. We're really not sure that we need the multisensory aspect of the instruction, and that's kind of the defining feature of it. There's also a lot of rules which are like highly emphasized. Like this program is very rote, it's very focused on these rules, and that might not be a great approach for all students, especially those who are susceptible to cognitive overload. One study cited in the Comprehension for All text even found that trying to memorize all these rules could interfere with the ability to comprehend text, which is our ultimate goal in reading, I think. So here's that main meta-analysis that I mentioned. This is the best research I could find on whether OG works and to what extent. So it's important because, interestingly, a lot of states actually have OG written right into the laws, even though there's really not conclusive evidence that it's better than anything else. So the authors of this study pulled together every study they could find through 2019, ending up with 24 that fit their criteria and 16 solid enough that they could actually use. The results, they didn't find a significant effect. They found a positive but insignificant effect. For basics like phonics, fluency, and spelling, the effect size was 0.22. And that's where we would expect OG to be the best. That's where we would expect it to shine. For comprehension and vocabulary, which is kind of where we're aiming, the arguably more important skills, though maybe not the ones that we need to be targeting with these students. I don't know, interesting question. So kids getting OG didn't outperform kids getting other instruction. So for comprehension and vocabulary, the thing I think is more important, it really didn't do much. It didn't do much more than other things. It's not that it doesn't work, it's that it doesn't seem to be better than any other good reading instruction. They checked whether better designed studies showed different results than sloppily designed ones, and they didn't, partly because most of the studies in this field are pretty weak to begin with. So, I've already really mentioned this, but the bottom line takeaway from this research is that it doesn't prove OG doesn't work. It's just that there's no evidence yet that it really is anything better than anything else. They say research it more with bigger samples. Though, because they looked at effect size, I don't see why bigger samples would actually do much. If they had been looking at p-values, I'd be worried about that. But if the effect size is small, then it's small. They didn't even mention the error bounds on it, which is what you'd be able to get tighter with larger samples. Unless they think that their estimate of the effect size is just completely wrong because their sample is just so small, but it's not that small. So the risk of Orton-Gillingham is that it leans hard into the mechanics of decoding and phonics rules, but treats word reading as something that you can isolate and drill, and that might make a long-term knowledge gap that gets in the way of being a real reader down the line. Real reading is more flexible than that. Some of the research is kind of scary, actually. Intensive OG instruction can, in some cases, actually cause a negative effect on reading comprehension. What kids really need is closer to what Ackerman and Schultz called textual dexterity, the fuller ability to read, use, and think critically about text, not just sound words out. So generously, I think that Orton Gillingham would be appropriate for students with or at high risk of word level reading disabilities or with dyslexia. That's who it was designed for. However, because of the need for highly trained practitioners, it's not accessible. Sayeski et al. 2018 said for lower socioeconomic backgrounds this is true. In my personal experience, it's true in higher socioeconomic backgrounds. In Newton at FA Day, we didn't have anyone OG certified, and some parents feel very strongly about OG, and we're very upset about that. It's designed for one-on-one, and then it's been adapted for small group and whole class instruction. To be honest, I think it's kind of a scam. Let's see. So I don't think that this would really work in the classroom settings I've seen. I can't imagine the 6th and 7th graders I work with cooperating with the multisensory techniques or the enormous amount of rote repetition. One-on-one, which is the intended setting, I could see a student cooperating, but out of the 6 students I've seen in a reading intervention, only 1 would cooperate with this in a group of 3 or 4. The students I know, I think, would hate pure Orton Gillingham, and they would successfully rebel against it. However, it could still be used carefully like this. You could have brief mini lessons, you could limit your isolated skill instruction like phonics, spelling rules, and handwritings to short, focused mini lessons of 5 to 10 minutes a day, and then immediately transition to something that's meaningful and interactive. But I really don't think Orton Gillingham is bringing anything special to the table here. And here are my references.